Recording.
Okay. So let's see. All right. Oh. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. My name is Tara Bailey, and I'm the founder of Vote Madison. We are a nonprofit organization based here in Madison, Alabama, with a mission to increase civic engagement in our community. One way we do this is by hosting educational events such as the debate you are all here for this evening. Tonight, we will hear from area residents as they make their case either in support of or against Madison changing to a council manager form of government. Back in January of this year, the Governance Transition Committee presented their report to council in favor of changing our government to a council manager system. It's important to mention that although the Governance Transition Committee has recommended that Madison make this change, it is the decision of our city council as to whether or not to initiate the process, and the final decision lies with the people of Madison. If Madison's city council chooses to move forward with this process, close to 900 signatures would need to be gathered from Madison residents, and a special election would take place. You can learn more about the recommendation from the Governance Transition Committee by visiting madisonal.gov and scrolling down to Madison News. In addition to this, Councilmember Renee Bartlett was recently appointed by Council President Greg Shaw to pick up where the Governance Transition team left off. She is planning to hold public information sessions sometime this summer to share facts and information for everyone before council proceeds further. We are fortunate to have this event co-sponsored by the League of Women Voters of the Tennessee Valley and are excited to be partnering with the nonprofit Braver Angels. Launched in 2016, Braver Angels is a national citizens movement to bring liberals, conservatives, and others together as at the grassroots level, not to find centrist compromise, but to find one another as citizens. Through workshops, debates, campus engagement, and more, Braver Angels helps Americans understand each other beyond stereotypes, form community alliances, and reduce the vitriol that poisons our civic culture. Thank you to Theo Brown, our state coordinator, who has helped make this debate possible. Also, thank you to Madeline McCarran, who for helping out with tonight's debate. The chair of our debate this evening is Paul Norris. Paul is an associate director in the Braver Angels debate program. He has chaired numerous debates at both the national and local level. He is also a state coordinator and a trained moderator. He's also been active in the various leadership roles since May of 2018. Thank you, Paul, for being here, and I will turn the floor over to you.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Tara. Can people hear me okay? I'm getting nods, okay. Also, I might mention I am half Southerner, and I feel very, very comfortable when I have the opportunity to visit the South. So there's a few things I need to explain about how the debate works. How many people have some familiarity with the chat function in Zoom? Of course, I can only see some of you, but okay, so I see a fair number of people. Okay, so we have set the chat so that you can only reach out to certain people, so you can't chat amongst yourselves. And please use the chat only to reach out to Madeline, who is what we call the whip for this debate. Please don't chat to me. Quite honestly, I'm probably not going to see it. I'm pretty busy looking at other things. So you use the chat to let Madeline know that you want to be a speaker, and then Madeline conveys that information to me. So that's the primary purpose of chat. And also, if you have a technical issue or something, you can try chatting to Madeline and see if she can help you with that. So what is a Braver Angels debate? We call it a collective search for truth. It's not about winning. It's not about about being competitive. And sometimes people actually change their minds at a Braver Angels debate, but that is not expected, nor is it required. Anyone can speak. You don't have to be an expert. You just have to be somebody who has a perspective from your own life. We ask that you bring your best self to the debate. To the opening speakers, I would like to suggest, think of yourselves not as opponents, but a team working together to explore the diversity of thoughts. Initially, I will start out and speeches will be 5 minutes. And when your time is starting to run up, I will start gesticulating or something like this. And if you continue after that, I may actually have to interrupt you. Sometimes I even have to mute somebody because they may not hear me, but usually people are pretty good about following the time. We have this convention in Braver Angels of what we call jazz hands. And jazz hands is a way that you can say, hey, I like what's going on. So think of it as applause for Zoom. We encourage personal stories and humor. You don't have to make the complete case for what you're trying to say. Somebody else will probably make a point you miss. Tell us what's important to you. And again, this thing that we call a debate that isn't really quite a debate, it's about creating trust, not adjudicating facts. So something else that is quite different from debates that you may have seen, we do not have rebuttals, but we have questions. And what we ask for is after somebody finishes speaking, I will take 1 or 2 questions, and we're asking for questions of curiosity. And this is a skill to develop. Not a gotcha question, but a question that can genuinely be answered from a position of answering curiosity. And good questions tend to require a bit of humility. In the format of this debate, please address me as Mr. Chair. That is my name for the duration of the debate. And don't directly address a speaker when asking questions. Refer to them in the third person. So instead of saying, well, geez, Jim, I don't know why you said that, you would say, Mr. Chair, the speaker said such and such. And I have a question I would like to ask about that. And also good questions really are what one of the major things that define how this is different from a traditional debate. If you are not speaking or going to be speaking very soon, please put your microphones on mute. And Madeline, I would encourage you that if we get background noise of any kind, please go ahead and just mute everybody, and then we can unmute the person who needs to be unmuted. So now to ask questions. So if you want to make a speech, send a chat to Madeline. But if you want to ask a question, there really isn't time for that. So raise your Zoom hand if you want to ask a question. And you can try raising your physical hand, but there's no guarantee I'm going to be able to see you. Does everybody know how to raise the Zoom hand? Please do it right now if you know how, so that we can see that everybody knows how. It's just, a little icon probably down at the bottom of your screen that says raise hand. And okay, it seems like just about everybody does it. If you're on a phone and you don't know how to raise your hand on the phone, chat to Madeline. And Madeline, are you able to tell people how to do that? I can't remember how to do it right now on a phone. I will take that as a probable, or that you can look it up and figure it out. We'll take a break about halfway through. I don't know if you're going to need a break, but chances are I'm going to need it. So it'll be about a 2-minute break or so. So now our resolution is resolved. The city of Madison should change to a city council, city manager form of government. And with that, I want to call the meeting to order. And I will look for our first speaker, who will be in the affirmative. And the first speakers are actually pretty well lined up. So I would go ahead and I would call on Alan Sullivan. Alan, you have 5 minutes to make your case.
Okay,
Please proceed.
thank you. Well, I am in favor of this. I guess it was in late 2014. A group led by John Allen, with me on it, met for the purpose of taking a look at whether we ought to move in that direction. If so, what the next steps would be. We worked through that, found several issues that kind of needed to be worked at the state legislative level. That work has been done. And now we're at the point where the mayor appointed a group of people to take a look at this, and you mentioned that already. And they unanimously said that was the direction they ought to go. So why is this important, and why is it something that I think we should do? The city of Madison has seen, I think, rapid growth is an understatement. The growth has been tremendous. It is bordered 360 by other communities, or principally one, the city of Huntsville. Through that growth, we have seen a continual change in council members, mayors, so that there's been a lack of continuity as you proceeded through. Long-term planning is a couple of years, short-term planning is tomorrow. We need to get to a point where we do a better job of that. With rapid growth comes a problem with constrained resources necessary for all the infrastructure. Recently, we had to go through a referendum to raise taxes to support our schools because we were limited out already because of the growth and couldn't build another school. We need to do a better job of continuity and look in long range. The legislation that's been approved recently would allow for, or would set up 6 council members elected by district, a mayor elected at large. The mayor would be the president of the council. The mayor and the council would appoint a city manager. Now, a city manager is an individual who has been trained typically as a city manager, gotten his degree in that, or she has, and we then do a nationwide search to take a look at what we think would be the best person to support us. The council mayor hires them and then has the right to fire them if they so speak. City manager becomes the COO, or the chief operating officer of the city at that point, and works with the department heads to make sure that council members and mayor are prepared for council meetings. Now, I've gone to several cities in the state of Alabama to take a look at how the city manager process works for them. I've talked to the citizens, I've talked to council members, and I've talked to city managers. And what I found is that the council members come to a meeting having all the material necessary for the decisions that need to be made at that meeting, ready to go. What we do in Madison today is the council members are doing a lot of that homework on their own. And so it's taking what most of them tell me is 16 or more hours a week just to do the council job. And they're not paid much money for this. I mean, these are professional people who have day jobs. And I think the city manager would give us, I've used the word continuity more than once, but greater continuity. I think it would let us do the long-term planning that we need to do in order to make sure that as we continue to grow, that we do it and do it smartly. I will leave it at that. If people have questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them.
Okay. Well within the 5-minute time frame that I had offered you. And can we give jazz hands for our brave first speaker? Being the first speaker is not necessarily the easiest thing to do. So now I'm looking for our first speech in the negative. And again, we have an initial lineup already in place.
Did you want to take any questions?
Oh, yeah, okay, thank you, sorry. Geez, that's a good reminder, isn't it? So do we have any questions of curiosity? And if you have a question, please raise your Zoom hand. Okay. Michael Bailey, please unmute yourself and ask your question to the chair.
Had to move to a quiet place here. Hi, my question, Mr. Speaker, is what is it that citizens do when there comes a threshold of dissatisfaction and there's an overlying sentiment that the city manager does need to be replaced? What's the recourse for citizens in that event?
Could somebody repeat that and get all of it?
Yeah, I could repeat it. And if I need to get a microphone, I can do that. But the question was, what's the citizens' recourse if there's an overwhelming sentiment that the city manager does need to be replaced? What's the process for citizens to express that and effect a resolution?
But like I said earlier, the council and the mayor hire the city manager. They also do the firing. They would work with their council members. They would come to council meetings. Council meetings are open. They could express their desire. My guess is, or my belief is, that if a significant number of people came and thought there was an issue, the problem would be resolved. City council serves at the discretion of the public and are there to represent the views of the public. The council we have right now, I think, does a very good job of that. I hope that answers your question, but I think you work through the council to get rid of the city manager if you deem that he or she is unsatisfactory.
And thank you to our first questioner. And our next person who has a question, Keith Williams. Keith, please address your question to the speaker through me.
Mr. Speaker, I read on what is a city council, city manager form of government is, and it looks like that the majority of the power in this form of government will rest upon the city council rather than a balance of power between the city council and the mayor. Now, I'm not from Huntsville. I live in Birmingham. And in Birmingham, what happened is that there has been a change in the Mayor Council Act in which the mayor has more power over, deciding what the budget looks like. That power was taken away from the city council. But in this form of government, the
Keith,
council
Keith,
has more.
can I nudge you in the direction of if you can formulate that into a concise question? And also, I would really encourage you to sign up to make a speech yourself if you'd like to say more at length. But please, can you formulate a question for the speaker?
Okay, I'm getting to that. My question, Mr. Speaker, is that how with this form of government, how the people can be assured that there would be a balance of power so that no particular branch of government have more power over the other.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
To address that?
Sure. The mayor still would work up, let me rephrase that. The mayor becomes the president of the city council. Like I said earlier, elected at large, council members elected by district. Right now, they all serve the same 4-year terms and then out. The city manager preps the stuff, but reports back to this group in order to execute the plan. I'm not sure what the issue was in Birmingham, but normally in the mayor council relationship or form of government, the mayor comes up with a budget, presents the budget, council looks at the budget, debates it, and passes it. In this, the mayor would still come up with the budget, but it would be prepared for all by the city manager, and it would be debated in public by the council and mayor, and then voted on by the council mayor. So I think there's a sharing of power across the board. Does that answer your question?
Actually, we really don't typically do dialogue. So asked and answered, I believe, and thanks to our second questioner. I think I'll take one more question before we go to our first negative speech. Jocelyn Brewer, please unmute yourself and ask your question.
My question is, I know at some point, and I appreciate the experience and the following for many years on this issue, but at some point this question came up previously with another mayor. And we did not end up pursuing a change in government. So, Mr. Speaker, my question is, why did we not pursue it that time, but yet we are going to try to pursue it this time?
I had to unmute. At that time, the mayor did not want to go forward with it. And if the mayor wasn't going to be in favor of it, frankly, it wouldn't work. And so when that particular mayor left, another mayor came in. We have worked with that individual. Mayor Finley has endorsed this process. He's gone to the point of bringing a group of people. He's taken that and is now trying to work the debate piece of it so we can move forward to get this question on a ballot and proceed forward. It's important that the city, the people in the city of Madison understand what this is and will do for them. I'm anything but the expert at it. A firm believer that it's what we ought to do, but not sure that I'm the expert. That said, I mean, the reason we didn't go before was that particular mayor was absolutely opposed to it. And given that he was opposed to it, it simply would have been a mess. I've seen two cases where a council wanted to move ahead and do it. In one case, it actually worked and worked well. The mayor was opposed, but as soon as it happened, shortly after that, the mayor became the biggest fan of the second one. Because the mayor was opposed, it never succeeded. So rather than spend the time, the money, and everything to get it on a ballot and do, and a mayor not be in favor of it, we didn't drop it. We tabled it until we had somebody that was more open to the issue. Does that answer your question?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Since we only have one more question, I think I'll go ahead and take it. Michael Sheehy, please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Thank you and good evening. I'd kind of like to follow on to the last one. Your answer to the last question kind of ties into what I was going to ask anyway. So it's
answer to the last question.
Correct. Yeah, the speaker's answer. Yes. So Mr. Speaker, again, thank you for your comments. I was wondering if you could tell us why the last mayor was opposed and what you see in having a look at this that should parallel with that. What are some of the disadvantages to this conversion? Thank you.
Okay, sorry. I couldn't find the unmute button. I can't think of any reason to be opposed to it personally. I'm sure there's some people who are, and that's one of the reasons we're here tonight, is to sit down and discuss it. There are a lot of reasons that the previous mayor was opposed to it, and I'm not willing to get into all of that. I mean, that ends up being, he was opposed, and it was not going to move forward. Mayor Finley, in his first term, moved forward slightly. He appointed an administrator, and that administrator handled some of the duties, not all. And in this second term, took a look by pulling a group of people in who then voted unanimously that we ought to move forward with the process. Now, the process is a long process. It will take us 3 years or so if we go through the process and ultimately get to that form of government. We need to start it now so that we have time to get it on a ballot before the next election. And we have to go to the legislature to get it put on a ballot. You know how it works in Alabama. So I think the time is right. When I look at just the infrastructure issues that we've got in the city of Madison, they're horrendous. The budget for roads is, I didn't know what pave a mile of road cost until recently. And actually it's an awfully large number. We're creating roads. We've got to do something to maintain the ones that are maintained by the city and not in some form by the state. There's no continuity at all in planning, or that's an understatement. I mean, that's a poor statement. There's
So
not
I
been
have
as
to
much
ask-
continuity as
I
there
have
could
to
be.
ask, can you wrap it up? The
Yeah, I will.
responses to questions are supposed to be kind of short too.
Yeah, okay, let me wrap it up. A council member, many of them have told me that when they get the job, it takes about 2 years for them to become effective. They serve another 2 years, run for election. So if the same person's not reelected, you now have to wait 2 years for somebody to become effective in the job, and some of the jobs are pretty detailed. If you continue to do this churn, and the history in the city of Madison is that we do. I mean, we've seen a churn from day one until today. We need to get something that gives us some continuity from one set of legislators to another, or council members to another. I end.
Thank you. Thank you. So we will now move to our first speech in the negative. Walton Anderson, please unmute yourself, and you have 5 minutes to make your case, plus whatever time you have for questions after.
I probably won't take the entire 5 minutes. I'm not entirely opposed to a mayor, city manager. I've just got a lot of questions about this. But primarily, I think that the city manager job could be handled by a chief of staff hired by the mayor, and that would make him easier to remove if he weren't doing the job. Put a city manager in, I would imagine that they would have entered the merit system, and that would make it harder to remove if needed. Then you've got another bureaucrat, you've got another salary that would have to be high enough to entice somebody to take the job. And I don't think you'd ever get all the politics out of it, because you can't take the politics out of politics. So there would be enough rub there that you're still going to have some politics involved in this office. So I'd want to take a real hard look at whether this was a good idea. Madison's had a pretty good run of hiring good mayors. Had a few bad ones too, but we've had, for the most part, have had good mayors, and I will agree that we do need to do a better job of planning in long range, but our department heads here always know where the line is that they need to follow to get to the mayor to the council and get their job done. I don't think there's any question that department heads in Madison know where the chain of command is and how to negotiate it. So, I'm just wondering whether we really need a manager or whether we need to take a really hard look at make sure we hire the right mayor and trust that mayor to have the chief of staff that would do the management day to day. I'm through.
Thank you. Thank you for a very lovely and concise speech. And so also jazz hands for our first speaker in the negative. Once again, an act that takes some courage. Looking for questions of curiosity. Does anyone have a question of curiosity for our most recent speaker? And I see Jim Chamberlain. Jim, please unmute yourself and ask your question of curiosity through the chair.
Mr. Chair, I had a question for the speaker. He mentions a chief of staff under the mayor, and I'm wondering if that it would be pretty much similar to what we have now, where at least Mayor Finley's been hiring an administrative assistant under the approval of the council for many of his terms, with good administrators like Mark Jacobson, Taylor Edge, and so forth.
Yeah, so thank you for that question. Mr. Speaker, were you able to understand? There was a little bit of a breakup in the audio, but you feel like you got the question?
Yes, I do feel like I've got it. That's the example that I was thinking of. Mayor had gotten good people to handle that administrative assistant or chief of staff, whatever you want to title it. That has been good. And I think mayor can trust his hire to do the job. If his chief of staff fails, mayor can always replace him. It would be come in one morning and you're gone that afternoon and hire another one. You have to go through council and mayor. It's going to be a lengthy process.
Okay, Walt, unfortunately, your audio is cutting out a bit. Were you completed with the answer? Walt, you're muted, and I think you probably want to unmute until we get whatever question.
Yes, okay, Mr. Speaker, I'm sorry, I am done with my answer. Okay,
thank you so much. And I believe we have another question. Arnita, please unmute yourself and ask your question of the speaker through me.
My question is that the case that Walt is talking about right now, the mayor is the only one that could hire and fire that individual. There was a previous question regarding whether the residents of the area community would have a say. Does this person interact now, the person you're talking about, Walt, does this individual interact now with the citizens of Madison, or just do the bidding of the mayor? And does the mayor set that person's salary?
Okay, so Walt, you can unmute and respond to the question, please. Walt, you're muted. Walt, are you still there? You're muted, Walt. Okay, I'm going to give Walt about another 10 seconds here, and then I guess we will move on to our next speaker.
There you go.
Okay, so we will now go on to our next speaker, a speech in the affirmative. I hope I pronounced your name right. Is that Obteen?
That's it.
Okay, you have 5 minutes, Obteen.
From
All right.
Madison?
I am. Yeah. Yeah. So my name's Optine Poor Biazar. I actually just graduated from high school, so I'm a little bit younger than everyone else in the Zoom call. But yeah, I just graduated from Bob Jones. Lived in Madison my entire life, and I just wanted to briefly mention some of the reasons that I'm in favor of a city council, city manager, form of government here. There's really two main reasons, and the first one was talked about, pretty intensively by Mr. Sullivan, and that's continuity. We have 4-year terms for the city council and mayor, and in 4 years, when you try to set the focus of city government, that's very short term, and you don't have, I guess, the power to set the path of government with the long term vision we really need. Somewhere like Madison, we need government to think of 20 years down the line, 30 years down the line, 40 years down the line, not just your 4-year term. And I know that the city council and mayor try to do that, but it's hard to implement that in 4 years when there's someone else who might be coming in very soon and kind of change path, right? So continuity, that's a big reason. I would say the second reason is kind of reducing politicization of local government, right? Obviously, wouldn't completely get rid of it, but when you have a city council, when you have a mayor, being reelected is part of the decision making process, right? They do what's best for the city, but also what will be most politically popular, and what's best for the city and what's most politically popular. Those two things don't always align. And when you have someone like a city manager, they can make those more objective decisions that are probably better, for the city as a whole, for the city long term, versus what's most popular in the short term, what's most popular when people are going to go vote for re-election. And yeah, so those are the main two reasons. Something else I wanted to quickly note that Mr. Sullivan talked about was that in 2015, there was a citizen committee that looked at this exact issue, and they actually recommended that Madison should move to a city council, city manager, a form of government, for lots of the reasons I just described. Big one being continuity. Mr. Sullivan talked about that. City Madison has had a lot of turnover. Mayors changing, city council members changing. When you have city manager that keeps continuity, and that report had also described that city manager system, it's very common in America, especially in cities that are larger than 10,000. They have a population larger than 10,000 people. It's a common form of government, and there's 2 cities around our size in Alabama, Anniston and Auburn, that both have the city council, city manager form of government, and both of their governments, citizens within those cities, they've been very satisfied with that form of government. So because the city council, city manager form of government, it keeps continuity, it reduces politicization of local government. I'm in favor of at least having a referendum, a vote of the people, to see if we should set that path for Madison.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for staying well within the bounds of time. And so looking for questions of curiosity to this speaker through me. And I believe, Jeff, I think you had your hand up first. Jeff, please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. And thank you, Mr. Speaker, for your presentation in the affirmative. I guess my question of curiosity for you is, do you fear that there might be some stepping on each other's feet in the roles of mayor and city manager? Like maybe they won't be able to know where one's responsibilities begin and the other ends. And so they might not, they might be in contention because there's not one sole single top executive to orchestrate that. And so that was one question. And then the second one,
so
this
Jeff,
one.
Please confine yourself to one question.
That's it.
Thank
you.
You get. Would the speaker like to address that?
Sure. So I'm definitely not the expert in this form of government, but my understanding is that the city manager would be in charge of coordinating, um, duties of the city. So different departments within the city, and the mayor would be more of a figurehead for the city. So going to like official events, things like that. It wouldn't, the mayor, he or she wouldn't have that same administrative role in the city council, city manager system.
Okay, thank you. Kathleen, would you like to unmute yourself and ask your question of the speaker?
Yes, so I'm hearing continuity, but I'm not hearing that there is a mechanism to ensure that when the mayor and city council turn over at their election points, that they won't just fire the city manager and bring in the new guy, just like we see with, presidential administrations. So is there something in this form of government that prevents that?
Yeah, so my understanding is that if you want to replace the city manager, you need the consent of the city council. And I'm not sure whether that's a simple majority or unanimous consent, but it's unlikely that the entire city council is going to be changed in a single election. So you will have some continuity. So it's not like or at least it's unlikely that you'll see 6 new faces after an election and completely change, the city manager. It's not like it's just the mayor appointing someone. Then it's probably more likely that it'll change. But because it's input from several different city council members and the mayor, there's probably going to be more continuity. At least that's what I would think.
Okay, thank you. Jim Chamberlain, please unmute yourself and ask your question of the speaker.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'd like to say it's so good to see youthful presence here, and I wanted to ask the speaker when he'll be running for elected office.
Well, I'm 18 right now, and I'm about to go to college, so probably not within the next 4 years, at least.
Soon, I hope.
But, yeah, but definitely something to look at. Hopefully soon.
And with that, we will thank our second speaker in the affirmative. And we will look for a second speaker in the negative. Larry Mason, are you in the house and ready to speak?
Yeah, yes, I'm here. I probably should preface this with what everybody else has been saying. I'm not an expert in this. I don't have a degree in political science. My degree is in city planning. I have worked in city administrations before. And I, like the other negative speakers, have not totally made up my mind. My initial reaction when I first heard of the proposal was to be against it. Since then, I've consulted with a lot of other friends. I'm on the board of Yorktown, Alabama. I know a lot of people in other towns and cities in Alabama, and I have some municipal administration experience as a programming contractor. But I still sort of lean against the city manager point of view, and most of the reason for that is accountability. I do like the idea that citizens actually validate their choice every 4 years, whether it's validate it or nullify it, and have that chance to affect policy. I guess that's the one thing that we're talking about, continuity, but one of the things about continuity is city policy. Policy has to, is the thing that implements a plan or any kind of moving forward administratively. It all depends on policy. Policies change people's ideas change as they try new things and as they look around and see what else is going on in the world and things like that. So whereas I think continuity is good and long range planning, obviously I'm a planner, so I think long range planning is a very positive thing. But I also understand that when you make a plan, you have to make room for changing that plan in terms of implementation if facts on the ground have changed. I'm sort of, the thing about a city manager is a good city manager is certainly going to demand a good contract, and a good contract will have clauses in it that make it difficult to he won't serve at the pleasure of the city council. You might think that he's going to serve at the pleasure of the city council, but it will be a difficult activity to remove him if, in fact, one feels, if the citizens feel that they need to change course one way or the other. The other thing about continuity is continuity also spells status quo, and sometimes status quo gets stagnant. And so it's nice to be able to involve the citizens in a way to reaffirm what it is that they really want and what is their vision for the future. I think along those lines, the thing about continuity, like I say, is that we want to be able to change if we see facts on the ground changing. That's pretty much, like I say, I'm still open. I know that there's a lot of my friends have pointed out the reason why city managers are better. They're technocrats, they're experts, and I have nothing against experts. I think experts have a large place in our governance and how we govern, but I hate to turn over the ultimate sort of decision-making to technocrats. I think that, again, I like the idea that citizens reaffirm what it is they want. That's pretty much my my feelings about it at this point. Like I say, I'm still trying to decide which way I feel.
Thank you, and right on your time frame as well. So we have room for some questions. Jim Ross, please unmute yourself and ask your question of the speaker.
Yeah, hi. I'm Jim Ross, and just for the whole crew tonight, I was on the committee that worked for the city council and Mayor Finley that put together the recommendation to move forward in the affirmative. So I know this issue inside out. I've seen all of the different pros and cons, and so if I could, I appreciate all the speakers, but the last speaker that just made the remarks, one of the things I just wanted to reinforce is the things that the speaker mentioned about strategy and policy making. All of those responsibilities, if we move to a city manager council form of government, all of the strategy and policy would still reside within the elected officials, which is really where the citizens drive their vote and their voice. And the city manager would really be the executor of those policies and strategy.
Could I move you in the direction of forming a clear question?
Yeah, so with that information, does that clear up that question for the last speaker? I think his points were 100% valid. I wanted to provide some context, so maybe it made more sense to the process. So I don't know how to frame it into a question. I just,
Okay,
I
well,
really,
so Jim,
I appreciate the speaker's comments and I really understand where he was heading with it. You know, based out about 9 months of my life working this issue, I wanted to respond to that. So,
Yeah. So Jim, you are, I believe you are going to be the next speaker in the affirmative, and you're going to have a full 5 minutes then. So
okay.
yeah,
No
you'll
problem.
have the chance to address whatever you like at that point.
Can I just say something on top of that?
Sure, you're the speaker.
I just wanted to say that basically, I think I really understand the fact, I mean, when accountability comes down to it, I really think that it becomes citizens' initiatives to be responsible for that kind of give and take there. Either form of government, whether it be a mayor that's elected year after year after year, term after term after term, or a city manager who gets in and stays 20 years. If the citizens are not involved in actually giving input, and too often we've seen city councils not really, I mean, they're representing narrow districts, with the exception of the one who will run as the president. But basically, they're broken into this kind of a divide and conquer thing. So we've seen strong mayors that have been, I guess, corrupted by power, and we've seen city managers that have been corrupted by power. And so it really, the form of government is not as important, I think, and that's why I struggle with this. The form of government is not as much a determinant as will the citizens actually step up and actually project their vision and help the city. We live in a time when it's too easy to say, oh, the government, they're over there, they're doing that. And we forget the fact that we are the government. And I guess it's in that light that I'm still going back and forth.
Thank you very much. And so that concludes things with our second speaker in the negative. So I don't know if you remember that I promised that we would take a break. And so we're going to take about a 2 or 3 minute break now. I encourage everybody, if you're sitting down, stand up, get up, move around a little bit. I'm going to be back in like about 1 minute myself. And then when we come back, Jim Ross, you will have 5 minutes to address the issue. Okay, calling people back to reconvene. and give everybody about 30 seconds or so. Okay, Jim Ross is our next speaker in the affirmative. And so please unmute yourself and give your speech of up to 5 minutes, Jim.
Thank you. So as I mentioned, I was actually on the committee that was assigned by Mayor Finley and the City Council to research the potential to transition to a city council or a council manager form of government. I believe it was 8 or 9 months of work. I will just tell everybody we did numerous interviews with all different cities across Alabama with all different forms of government. We looked at the 2015 report. We talked to different elected officials, and ultimately what we came to the recommendation. Again, the city council and the mayor have to move forward with this, and there's a process. But our recommendation was 100% unanimous to move to the council manager form of government. And I'm just going to hit on a few of the issues that have been talked tonight and some of the things that our committee found were driving factors in our decision. So one thing I want to make clear is that if we move to this form of government, it is inside the state legislative rules, and there is an act that covers this. And a city manager cannot put it in their contract of how they can't be removed from office. It is very simple, and it is part of Alabama state law that if a city manager wasn't meeting the job performance as noted by the mayor or the city council, that individual could be removed by a majority vote from the mayor and council, period. So there's nothing that a city manager that we hired, if we went to this form of government, could do to put roadblocks in that process. They work for the mayor and the city council, period. Number two is they work solely to handle the administrative functions of the city. They are not setting policy. They are not driving strategy. They are executing, and really they are the person that is dealing with the department heads and running the day-to-day operations. And it's a professionalized, credentialed position that takes a background similar to some of the folks that have spoke tonight. There is a background that the city would probably look for folks that are trained and prepared to do these jobs. The thing with this form of government is that the city council and the mayor, as they set the requirements, the professionalism of the city manager would really be, all the politics would be removed from the city manager role, and it would really be administrative in nature. And I know that that's important, but I think one of the things that we struggled with as a committee was the voters and the citizens of Madison, they elect their leaders, and that's important, and that matters, and having that voice. And I think really what I want to reinforce is the citizens don't lose their voice by moving to this form of city government. Because again, that city manager is there to run day-to-day city organizational and administrative functions. But our elected officials, they are the leaders that will lead the vision and strategy of the city. I think the role of the mayor would change a little bit. But really what the mayor would be relieved from is the administrative and daily duties that can take a lot of focus away from the duties that we need as a chief executive of our city. With this change in city government, the mayor would still retain the chief executive officer capacity of our city government, would still be in charge of developing and ensuring execution of our strategic vision, would serve as a city council president and at-large voting member, would continue to represent the city at key events, work with city partners and other municipalities, engage the public on a regular basis, and promote our city. If you look at, one scenario, if we elected a mayor that was wildly popular and had a lot of great characteristics, but zero experience in public administration and all the things it takes to run a city, with the growth and the direction we're heading in the city of Madison, we are going to be, if not the largest city in Alabama or region, it's going to be really close. And with that growth, we need to professionalize how we run the city. And that's another factor that went into our recommendation. So I'm pretty sure I'm at time. I'm more than happy to answer any questions. I am here tonight representing my experience on the committee, but I'm not representing the committee because there was 6 of us. But I was notified and asked if available to call in, and I support the organization that runs this, that set this up. So
Okay. And
I am open for questions.
yeah, that seems to have sparked a lot of questions. And so let's start with Larry Basin. Larry, please ask your question of the speaker through the chair. Larry, can you unmute yourself?
Yeah, excuse me. I was finding the mute button. It hides itself when you give it 10 seconds. Yeah, I have a real quick question. In terms of when you talk about policies and things like that, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, can you ask the speaker, in terms of department heads making decisions, there are certain priorities that have to happen, and those priorities can be a way of subtly implementing policies. I guess that's it. So to say that the city manager doesn't have any power, there is power there. So I guess what my question is there a way to be able to for city council and representatives of citizens to give input to the city manager in terms of priorities that happen in between elections and in between terms of office?
Yeah, so great points, Larry. So
yeah, please refer a little bit to us directly.
Yeah, okay. So
I know you guys know each other, but
no, we don't actually. But thanks for the comment. And I guess I could just say that the city manager absolutely has power, but the power would be a way to look at it would be like a chief operations officer of a very large corporation. The CEO is still running the corporation, but the chief operations officer is, working with those division chiefs or department heads. And, and you're absolutely right. I'm sure priorities would be flowing from the elected side of the city leadership to the city manager, but it's the city manager's job to make sure that they're being executed. That's kind of how I would answer that question.
Thank you. We seem to have quite a lot of questions, and I think we could probably get through most or all of them. Greg Shropshire, please unmute yourself and ask your question of the speaker.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question for the speaker is, other than continuity, which is a very good point, what are some specific examples of of those executive day-to-day administrative functions that the city manager would take away from the elected officials?
It would be stuff dealing with maybe public works, utilities, just functions with the, maintenance. Those type of functions would be moved off of the mayor into the city manager role.
Yeah.
There's
And-
probably a lot more, but that would be the type of things that are important to the citizens, but do we need a mayor to manage all of the nuances that go into that, when we could have a city manager working with those department heads and taking that and allowing the mayor to focus more strategically, I guess. So thank you.
And an exceptionally clear question, by the way. Jeff North, please unmute yourself and ask your question.
I guess, Mr. Speaker, regarding, I see this this proposal as somewhat diluting the power of the position of mayor that we have in the city today. And I wonder if many of the benefits could be achieved with a mayoral assistant, or I think the mayor has a great degree of power to create subordinate management as he wants, to offload whatever degree of management burden. Already, I believe the current mayor has created sort of a super departmental head who has department heads reporting to that person. So, is it really necessary to alter this legally, or can it be done to a willing mayor already?
Yeah, and this, my opinion is that the recommendation to move to this form of government is in no way an indictment against any of the current operations and day-to-day actions of our mayor, city council, or our city administrator that's in place right now. I don't even know if it's technically a city administrator. I do believe it's like an assistant. But I guess my counter would be, somebody could get elected mayor in the next election, and they could bring in their golf buddy to be the assistant. And then let's just say they have zero experience in running something as complicated as the city of Madison. And what would our recourse be then? Wouldn't have any. And it could happen. So.
Asked and answered. Asked and answered. Jocelyn Burr, please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Okay. Mr. Speaker, would the current city administrator qualify for the new city manager position?
That would be above my pay grade. The mayor and the city council would have to set the criteria of what they were looking for. When I was on the committee, one of the things we asked other city that use this form of government is how they recruit and how they find them. And what we learned is that there are actually very good educational credentials that folks can earn in certifications towards city management to prepare them for that. And then there are positions that prepare them for that type of thing. So ultimately, I think the requirements to be the city administrator would be set by the council and the mayor. And I don't think I would be the right person to try to answer if the current individual or past individuals would be qualified. I believe the city would look for a credentialed professional person with a background in city management, more so than looking for let's say a former city council person or a person that was successful in a certain business industry or something. I honestly believe the right answer would be to find a professional city manager to do the role. But
Okay,
that's my
asked and
opinion.
answered. Asked and answered. Tara Bailey, please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Well, actually, it was along the same lines. Mr. Speaker, there was mention that having a city manager helps to remove the politics. With this in mind, would you recommend that our city council search for a city manager outside of the city? So it kind of touches on the same thing.
I'll give you my opinion. I believe they would have to find the right individual. You know, I don't think this is the type of position you're looking for a good old boy, or, you know, using that slang, I guess you could say, but this is something that you got to find the right person. And I think you would have to be nationwide looking for the right person, and not limit it to somebody who's heavily involved in, let's say, North Alabama politics or something. I think we're looking for the right individual to handle the administrative and day-to-day functions of the city. You know, we definitely would want to remove any thoughts of nepotism or any of that stuff. And it goes back to transparency and other things that are important to the citizens, not just in Madison, but across the US.
Okay, thank you. And with that, the speaker and the questioners are thanked. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And now we are going to our next speech in the negative, or at least questioning and wondering. Adam Cattell, are you here, and can you unmute yourself and take up to 5 minutes to make your speech or your position in the negative? And is Adam there? Adam was going to be on the phone, so.
Yeah, it looks like he may, I don't see him on here anymore. You might want to go to the next speaker.
Okay, so our next speaker in the negative, and give you a moment to take a breath, because I don't know if you knew that you were going to be coming up so quickly. Keith Williams. Keith Williams, are you here, and can you unmute yourself?
Yes, I am here.
Great, Keith. You have 5 minutes to make your speech in the negative.
Okay, so I highlighted 3 points about my negative response to the city council manager form of government. My first point is that there's a perception that the city council will have more power than the mayor by taking some executive duties away from the mayor along with their legislative duties, which means that the city council will have a dual role in Madison, in the city of Madison. If that happens, that tends to have some positive aspects, and that tends to have some negative aspects. The positive side of this is that the council will have more control over the budget, which in cities like Birmingham, that's not the case, because in Birmingham, the Mayor Council Act was recently adjusted in 2016, giving the mayor more authority over the budget than the city council, has, even though that has been for years one of their primary duties according to the Mayor Council Act. That was taken away. In this form of government, the city council will have the sole responsibility of making sure that the budget, is passed without much, direct influence from the mayor in this form of government. However, I do not agree that a small body should have that much power in city government, simply because in the recent years, we have seen a lot of city council members, with this type of power have abused their power for their own personal gain. And that perception is definitely not a good look when you're trying to be a servant of the people and serve the interests of the public. So that's not a good perception. The second point is that this form of government doesn't necessarily stamp out corruption. A city manager being controlled by the city council, there's going to be some politics in there. We cannot escape that. But to one of the speakers mentioned that you may have to go outside of the city in order to find someone who is qualified to be a city manager. Now that may work in it, in a case, but again, it may not. A great case would be again in Birmingham when the mayor appointed a police chief that did not live in the city of Birmingham. And without any input from the people, that turned out to be a great mistake. So while it may sound good on paper, it may not necessarily be in the best interest of the people. And then finally, with the mayor being stripped of some executive powers and being president of the city council, what does this office, what is what distinguish the position of mayor distinguish itself from the city council in terms of being the CEO of the city when you have a city manager that's actually, handling the day-to-day operations of the city? Now, would you consider the city manager to be the CEO of the city or the mayor? So I'm looking at the whole perception, that may, sound good on paper, but in actual, theory, the mayor is really not going to have, the type of power that people, proclaim to be, in this form of government, especially if if the mayor is part of the city council, which means that, he or she will share, some of the duties that the city council will have under this form of government. So that's pretty much, and then we have to talk about what type of accountability measures would be in place so that there would be a balance of power so that these three positions, the city council, the mayor, and the city manager, does not have too much power. So that is my position, my negative position, and I'm open for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. And right on time. Well done. So we have a couple of questions. Michael Sheehy, please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So you'd mentioned a police chief example, and actually I thought that might be a good analogy to the city manager position. If we're looking for somebody, as a previous speaker indicated, potentially come in from the outside that's a certified professional in the field, like a police chief is a certified law enforcement official. If we're looking for a certified city manager that's a subject matter expert, does that not rather afford us a degree of independence to operate within their function rather than being guided purely by a political appointment as would a city administrator?
Mr. Speaker, question understood?
Yes, I think there's a direct correlation between those two, and I believe that in each of those positions, there should be a set standard. Now, the question would be who would set those standards as to, for example, who would qualify to be a city manager and who, and in this government that we're talking about, city council, city manager, the city council will have to make that determination. Which means that they would solely be responsible for hiring a city manager, and that the city manager would be at the pleasure of the city council. It's kind of like a nonprofit organization where you have a board of directors, and the board of directors is responsible for, hiring executive director, and the executive director is supposed to be, take care of the day-to-day operations, and they are served at the pleasure of, the board of directors and not the other way around. So with that, being, understood, the question would be what kind of accountability and transparency measures are in place? And if the city, I mean, the people that live in the city will have any type of input on who they feel that the city manager, should be. So for me, to participate in this form of government, my question would be what kind of accountability measures are in place? And then finally, should we start with looking at people who are already in the city before we go on the outside, or should we go on the outside, to look for someone? So those are the questions that the city needs to, address before they even start looking for someone. Because again, we're talking about um, transparency. If there's going to be any level of transparency, or there's going to be any type of accountability. Because if not, people are going to lose interest, in the government. Because if there's no transparency and there's no accountability, you're certainly not going to have any participation in government, period.
Okay, thank you. So we have another question for the speaker. Maura, I hope I pronounced your name right. Please ask your question of the speaker.
Yes, good evening. My name is Mara Robleski, and I just want to first say thank you to Vote Madison for having this Zoom tonight. I hadn't planned on participating, but I believe I can help with some clarification to the speaker's question concerning the budget. And my apologies, my video is not working.
Maura, let me ask you, is this actually a question or do you want to make a speech?
Well, I want to provide answer on how the budget process works for the city of Madison.
Okay, so it doesn't sound to me like you want to ask a question. So how about we get you in line to make a speech?
Well, no, I really was just going to learn and listen. So that's okay. I don't mind. I'll just go back to learning and listening.
No, okay, I really do want to hear from you.
Okay.
But because of the format we're in, I can't let you get away with making a speech.
I understand, and my apologies for
question.
being late. I missed the ground rules. I didn't get in here till about 7:15. So yes, that'll be fine. If you could just add me to the queue, Mr. Norris. Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Chair. Do you consider yourself affirmative or negative?
I'm going to be voting on this issue, so I'm not going to, I'm just really here. I'm on city council, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, okay.
I'm on city council, so I was just going to provide an answer to the budget process.
Okay,
so,
we'll find a way to get you in the queue then. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you. Jeff North, please unmute yourself.
A brief one. Thank you, Mr. Chair. A brief one for Mr. Speaker. Had you ever considered, I know that if the change to city manager were to occur, then the number of city council districts would go from the current 7 to 6. And I was wondering if it ever gave you concern that you're like having less one-to-oneness with your representative, that the under this proposal, the city council representatives would represent thousands more people than they do today, and maybe there would be less representation for voices. Did you ever consider that angle?
Yeah, that definitely will go to the when I talk about accountability and transparency, you kind of hit that on the nail. So not only that you're going to have, one less person, that serves on the council, you also diminishing the voice of the people in that particular district that's being done away with, or the population of that district will probably be redistributed to the to other districts. So I don't know how that will work, because the only time that the lines are redrawn, is through the census every 10 years. So that might have to be, explored if a district is being taken away. But the bottom line is is that if you have 6 or 7 council members, representation, solid representation is very important. And so this is one of the things that people are going to have a conversation about when you're going from 7 to 6 representatives. Well, who's going to represent me, and where's our leadership? And so they're going to have those type of questions. Again, it all goes back to in this form of government, what kind of accountability is going to be implemented, what kind of transparency is going to be implemented. Because in this form of government, the perception is that the city council is going to have the majority of the power. That's the perception.
Okay,
And since the
and
city
thank you.
manager-
Thank you.
and since-
Thank you. We have to try to keep the answers down to like about a minute or so, please. Jennifer, please unmute yourself and ask your question of the speaker.
Okay. Well, if we go with this type of new type of government, will there be more cooperation with Huntsville as a metro? I've heard people linking this to becoming more of a metro government. And will there be more cooperation with regional governance, like say the Appalachian Regional Commission? Or will there be, because I kind of get the impression that this is to maybe bring in more revenue through grants, or perhaps, am I on the right track?
Please try to get a clear single question out of this. And I thought I heard a question along the lines of, is part of this going to lead to more cooperation on a metro level?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. Mr. Speaker, could you please address that question? Again, about a minute or less, though, please.
Okay. You don't necessarily need a council, a city manager form of government, to do that. I know most cities have like a inner government affairs department, whether it's a city department or within the city council. So this form of government, you don't necessarily need that, but the council can form some type of committee or something to do that, so that is possible.
Okay, thank you. And with that, the speaker is thanked. And let us now move on to our next speech, which is in the affirmative. And Jim Chamberlain. I'd also like to encourage people to make the speeches a little bit shorter now, so we try to get everybody in. So Jim Chamberlain, are you here? And can you give a speech in the range of 3 to 4 minutes?
Thank you. Yes, Chairman. And thank you, Tara, Paul, Madeline, everybody for putting this together. This is really a wonderful discussion we're having. I just wanted to give you a little bit of my personal experience as a longtime resident of Madison, comparing a little bit this city manager form to my work experience as a NASA contractor manager. And then I wanted to just hit on the major reports that we have to help us make a decision. The recent 2022 report, and then the prior, much more extensive 2015 report. So I'm a longtime resident, 36 years, raised my family here. We love it. Our kids have moved to DC, but we've retired and we want to stay in Madison. And I think it's a wonderful place. We've seen so much change. And of course, folks like Walt Anderson could tell you how much Madison's really changed. But just in the last 36 years, we've gone from 12,000 people to almost 60,000. So 5 times. There was one red light in the city of Madison, internal, when we moved here, and a few out on Highway 72 and Madison Boulevard. You know what? We probably have 100 lights now. So the city's boomed constantly since we've been here. And before, we've seen 7 mayors, including one who had to move because her husband got transferred to Houston. And so a city council person filled in as mayor back in the 80s. So a lot of change. Glad to see Mayor Finley's been using city administrators, and I think that's his initiative. Of course, those have been approved by the council, but I think as the city's grown, you know, we've just got so much work to do. Folks like Taylor Edge, Mark Jacobson, I haven't worked with Steve Smith, but these have all been really good people to handle the details, the day-to-day effort of running the city. You know, and this has become a big business, $40 million budget. I'm not sure 100 plus employees. And of course, what's made Madison is the school system. And I think we have a great school system. We have a good city. I'd love for it to be great, but I really think the school system is what's driven us. And look how our school system works. It's by representative. It's not direct election of supervisor and board members. We count on our city council to pick, you know, good people to run the schools. And if they don't, then we replace them. So just a point there. And then again, I hope everybody's looked at the 2022 report. It's on the city website. To me, it's very brief. It alone would not convince me to go to city manager forum, but go back to the 2015 report, which is also on the website, has a lot more detail, and it has references to reports that have been done of national surveys. And when you look at those, you'll see, and we should look at cities that are not tiny, say 10,000 people and above. 2/3 of the cities in the Southeast that have more than 10,000 people use this form of government, this council city manager. It's the most common form of government, and it's the most popular form for cities to switch to. So I know we shouldn't do things just because everybody's doing it, but think about that. 2/3 of the cities over 10K in the Southeast are using this form of government. And just another few quick notes. I know there's cost involved, but you got to remember the cost of the city manager, you subtract whatever the cost of the city administrator was, right? Because we're really just formalizing something we've been doing, and we're replacing one salary with another, plus saving the cost of a city council position. So, you know, we do need to look at this in detail, but from everything I have seen, I think it's time for Madison to grow its form of government to match the growth in its population. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We have some questions. Jennifer, please unmute yourself and ask your question. Jennifer, can you unmute yourself and ask your question?
I didn't mean to raise my hand, but can I ask, okay, quick question. Have they got the signatures, the 900 signatures to
So
the ball rolling?
yeah, that's not really my area, but since I'm the speaker, I happen to know, I believe that would be one of the steps coming up. And that does, I think that's another good reason to support this, is it's still got to jump through some hoops that if folks really want it, it'll be interesting trying to get 900 signatures. You know, that's a lot of signatures, but that would be an upcoming step, Jennifer.
Okay, and Keith, please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Okay, Mr. Speaker, is there so what is the greatest benefit from having a council manager form of government any different than a Class 7 municipality, which shares some of the same functioning as the form of government that Madison is proposing?
Well, yeah, I don't know what Class 7 is, but I will compare it to what I've seen in my time is we had a mayor with no city administrator when we were much smaller. And then the job just got too big, and we've had a city administrator for much of the last 10, 15 years. And now I see going to a city manager as another forward step beyond having a city administrator in terms of what many people on here have suggested, the professional nature of a city manager. You know, we've had 7 mayors. Some have been good administrators, some have not. So the professionalism, the continuity, it seems that every time we get a new mayor, we've had 7 of them since I've been here, and you get a fair amount of council turnover. It's kind of like we're starting over in a lot of ways. So we've got a lot of problems, a lot of issues. We're booming. You know, look at our streets, our infrastructure. I think, you know, a manager would help that.
Okay, and thank you. Thanks to the speaker and the questioners. Well, okay, somebody else got their hand up. I just saw that. Al B, haven't heard from you before. Please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Excuse me, Mr. Speaker. Can you describe how accountability for hiring police chief, fire chief will be different under this system? I'm just curious if there's a radical change and if this would put the manager in between he and maybe the council if there's an issue that we feel like one of those chiefs need to be removed. Thank you.
Right. I can't answer that question now. I do know, you know, if you look in the 2022 presentation, it talks about hiring and firing, but that would have to be directed maybe to one of the committee members.
Okay, thank you. Well, I see hands are still going up. Maura, you were actually going to be the next person I call on, but if you have a question, please go ahead and ask your question.
Well, I was just going to answer the question that that Albie had regarding how this could
Okay,
possibly.
so Maura,
Yeah, okay.
So, okay.
Okay.
So we are about to have your speech.
Okay.
Before we do that, you know, just like to give thanks to our latest speaker and, you know, show our appreciation. And so, Maura, you now have the floor for up to 5 minutes.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you again. And again, my apologies that I was late getting home from another event. So I missed all of the instructions, and that happened frequently throughout elementary school. So it's not been a different experience for me. So just to give a little bit of recap for those that don't know, I am on city council. I am not going to be able to say if I'm for or against this. And in fact, when I did the survey, I said I will not speak because I really am here to listen and learn. But now that I have an opportunity to provide some answers, I want to be able to do that. And again, my apologies that my light, even though it's on, the picture is not working, and I apologize for that. So the most recent question, I've been taking some notes here. The most recent question is, the city council appoints the city attorney, the police chief, the fire chief, and the city clerk. Those are our 4 appointments that occur maybe during our term, maybe not during our term. Our most recent city clerk was appointed last year. The previous city clerk was appointed 32 years ago. Our police chief, we just appointed our second one. We came in with a vacancy. We appointed Chief Jernigan. Then most recently, we appointed Chief Gandy. Fire chief had retired just before we came in. We appointed Chief Bailey to that. And our city attorney has just given her notification that she'll be leaving in June to go to work for Madison County. We'll be going through that process again. So hopefully that answers that question. That process will not change. The mayor appoints the department heads for the other 11 departments. So he appoints the department head, for example, for building, planning, engineering, finance, IT, Parks and Rec. The departments in Madison City range from 120 20-ish in our police department down to 4 in our IT department. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of background on the mayor appoints those others, we appoint those 4. Then to address the question regarding the budget, the way the budget process works is that each department is tasked with doing their own individual budget. They can reach out to a coworker. For example, I know that Chief Bailey and Deputy Chief Williams sit down and they go over their budget line by line. Some of the organizations may do it only by themselves. For example, our IT director, he may have somebody look at it, he may not. So each department does their own budget, and they're actually working on it right now. It's done through the department in like the May-June timeframe. Then they will take their budget and they will sit down with Mayor Finley, and they literally go down line by line, salary, capital projects, various equipment. And the budgets range, as you can imagine, some budgets are very large. Public Works is probably the largest budget. It's, those bulldozers are expensive and they have a lot of employees. So after they sit down with the mayor and he kind of fine tunes the budget, then it goes to the finance committee. The finance committee consists of our department head for finance, Mr. Bellamy. It consists of Renee Bartlett, she is the finance chair, and Connie Spears and Teddy Powell. So those are the finance committee, and they meet once a month to go over bills and things like that. But the budget will go to them. Then they fine tune it. So by now it's kind of August-ish. That's when it then comes to city council. It's sent out in an email. It's about 36 pages long, and it has each department broken down literally line by line. And you can go and see the budget on our website, madisonal.gov. Go to the finance section, excuse me, and it will have the budget, and it will also have the mid-year budget, which we do around probably in April. We did that in April. So hopefully that kind of answers the budget question. And then there was one other thing. And Renee Bartlett, at Monday night's council meeting, Renee Bartlett was appointed by Mayor Finley to be the chair of this committee. Should you want to contact any city councilman, if you want to contact all of us, you can send an email to citycouncil@madisonal.gov. If you want to send an email to a council member or anybody that's in the city, it's our first name dot last name at madisonal.gov. So I would be mara.robleski@madisonal.gov or paul.finley@madisonal.gov. If you want to send it to the mayor's office, that would go to his administrative assistant, who's Kim Lindsay, and his city administrator, Steve Smith, and they would all see that. So the other point I want to make is if you want to look to a nearby city where you can kind of see the role of a city administrator, I would encourage you to look to Huntsville. How am I doing on time, Mr. Chair? I forgot to look. Am I okay?
Yeah, I was going to ask you to wrap up pretty soon.
Okay. So I'll just ask you, Huntsville has their city council meetings on Thursday night. I think it might be tonight at 5:30. They last about 5 hours. So when you finish here, you can probably zoom over there and you'll see how John Hamilton gives a report at every council meeting. He is a more visible city administrator. Mr. Smith is more behind the scenes, but he is able to handle the minutiae, I believe that's how you say it, of the day-to-day working of the city. So my time is up, but yes, and I'm happy to take any questions. And again, my thanks to I Vote Madison for having this. I hope we can do something like this again for this subject or any other subject.
Okay, thank you. And so just checking in with the people who set this up, I believe it was set up to be 2 hours. Is that correct? So we should be wrapping up in about 10 minutes.
Yes, I actually thought it was maybe like 90 minutes.
Really? Okay. So we
but
actually
we're-
had not clearly communicated the time frame. Well, I'm going to be really working here to wrap us up on time at the top of the hour. And so with that, I'm going to have one more speaker that I want to get in, but I think we can take at least one question for Mara. And Jeff, you had your hand up first.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Mrs. Speaker, I know you are not advocating yes or no on the question, but I would just, for information, I was wondering if you could reflect on the council size question. Going from 7 districts to 6 would mean that each of you would have thousands more constituents that you represent. How does that make you feel just from I've never been a city council person, so I'm just wondering, do you see that as an issue, going from changing the number smaller?
Sure. Well, we would be changing the number anyway due to the census. If you look at the map of City of Madison right now, you see that it's very heavy on the west side. Councilmember Spears probably has, I want to say she said like 13,000 people. I have 6,000 people. I was able to knock on every door in my district twice, relatively easy. I'm not running again. So I've already said that, you know, if my district needs to kind of be adjusted a little bit, I mean, I'm just very supportive of whatever the majority of the people want. That's my whole thing is, and that's why I came on here, was to listen to see what is it what is it you want? So all of the districts will grow anyway, because, you know, my district is so small at 6,000 people. Even before we started to discuss this with the census coming up, I knew it would grow bigger. So I think that's okay. And I would really love to hear Heather's question, because Mr. Speaker, she and Tara actually put this on. Is it possible that I can beg mercy and have her question as well?
Well, you're begging for something I was going to do anyway. So.
Oh, very good.
Heather, please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I would like to ask the speaker. She mentioned that the mayor now hires for the 11 departments. If we did hire a city manager, does she know if he would still be the one, even though he was on council, to do that? Or would it solely fall to council, or just remain the same? Do we know what would happen in
Yes,
that instance?
Yeah, I feel sure that the 4 that the city council currently hire would still say that with that designation. I think that's a great question. I mean, we are just, as the chair mentioned, we are just getting started, you know, in pursuing this. And I would encourage everyone to send their thoughts to Renee Bartlett, or again, if you want us all to know, citycouncil@madisonal.gov. You know, I hate to even guess, but I almost, if I had to guess, if you said, you know, you got to guess one way or the other, I would guess it would fall to the city administrator, because they are going to be the person that is running the day-to-day, you know, hey, this bulldozer broke. We need to get us, you know, a quick fix here. We need to borrow one from Huntsville, whatever the situation is, the more, I don't want to say menial tasks, but those that just affect, as Mr. Ross said, the day-to-day operations of the city, and helping those go more smoothly. Madison has the city of Madison employs about 350 people. So you can imagine having to, you know, put out fires all day long on things that really could go to somebody who is experienced and educated as a professional city planner. And somebody asked earlier about, you know, would it be a council member? It would not. I would be willing to bet it would. We're going to do everything we've done in hiring somebody, whether it's been the police chief, or we've got an associate planner, economic development planner. We search nationwide because people want to move to Madison. We have a lot of good things to offer, especially our school system, our quality of life. I think, you know, not to say that we wouldn't, you know, look to family. I mean, we'd want to get as many qualified people as possible. And I hope that answers the question.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I've been trying to take all the questions so far, but we're getting close to time to wrap up. And we have one additional speaker. So I would ask the people who are currently have their hands up, please hold your questions, and who knows, maybe they'll fit for the next speaker as well. So David Raby, I don't know if I'm pronouncing your name correctly.
You did. Most people don't, but you did.
All right. Well, how about that? Okay. So, yeah, please give your speech. I'd ask you to try to keep it in the 3-minute range if you can.
Okay, just real quick. Thank you for organizing this. Thank you all that are here. Thank you to all the speakers that have gone before. I just want to hit a couple of highlights that are in my mind. Any of us on this call, except for Mr. Chairman, who looks like he doesn't live in the neighborhood, could be elected mayor this next time. And if that happens on a Tuesday night, Wednesday, you're in charge of $40 million budget, 350 people. You know, if you're like me, you ran on a platform of we're going to lower all the traffic lights by 3 feet. I don't know anything about budgets, people, all that kind of thing. I ran on my issue. What continuity was used at the beginning, I think that is extremely important for the city. This person we're talking about would be trained, certified in what they're doing. There is a professional organization that certifies these people. I have no knowledge of what the job requirements are going to be, how it's going to be written, but I would imagine it would include that certification. That certification spells out rules such as non-political. Something was mentioned about a golf buddy or something like that. Can't be that. I would also imagine the city of Madison, as big as we are, we're going to be looking for the best we can get, which is going to be a nationwide search. And there are people that would love to jump at this job. The mayor and city council, they run on certain issues when they're elected, but they can get bogged down in all this administrative things that are going on. Hiring a city manager would free them up to do what we elected them for. If they're in favor of this thing, they have more time to go out and do that. I think that's a huge advantage of this. Council and the mayor still write the laws. The city manager is responsible for implementing the laws. That's not taking the hands out of anybody that we elect, or the power out of the hands of anybody that we elected. The mayor gets a vote. Right now, the mayor can recommend things, but the council does all the voting. The mayor would get a vote on this or in future situations. I think that's a great thing. Several cities have been mentioned that have done this. And I'm going to mention Auburn just to kind of address one thing that came up a little earlier. There was a question about when we elect a new mayor, won't they just fire the city administrator or city manager and replace them with another one? Auburn, over the years, the fastest growing city has been either Auburn and Madison or Madison and Auburn. So very similar in size and growth pattern. Auburn has a city manager that they've just replaced because he retired, and I'm making up this number, so don't hold me to it, but it's out after like 25 years. So I don't know how many mayors he went through, but it's been the same city manager for the whole time. We also talk about size of cities. This type of government is used by San Antonio, Texas, and Las Vegas, Nevada also. So it's not just a small city, it's a city that needs something professionally run and is looking to free the politicians up to be politicians and go out and do the things they want to do, but also make sure the city's business is taken care of in good fashion. And that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. So we have 2 questions. First, let me prioritize. I am going to take both of the questions. And then I think we're going to go to wrap up. But first, in order of priority, let me just make sure, are these questions for this speaker? Do they fit this speaker? And if the answer to that is yes, then Keith, please unmute yourself and ask your question.
No, I'm going to lower my hand down because, my question is not for the current speaker, but for the previous speaker.
Well, you know what? I'm going to come back and let you do that, but I'll come back to you. Michael Sheehy, is your question for this speaker?
It is, presuming he can answer it, but he mentioned, so Mr. Speaker, thank you for your observations. You'd mentioned some other cities as examples. I'm wondering if you can tell us from those other cities, do the key positions that council currently hires and presumably will continue to hire here in Madison, the police chief and the others that were mentioned earlier, under the city management form of government and with the city manager running day-to-day operations, previously those positions would report to the mayor. Under this new form of government, will they report to the mayor and council, those key positions only that the council hires, or will they be reporting to the city manager for day-to-day tasking and guidance? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Very good question. I'm not an expert on this. My thought would be the city manager is going to handle all the day-to-day. So the questions would first go to them. The mayor is still the CEO, but the city manager is going to take care of it 99% of the things before it ever reaches that level. Now, again, I'm not an expert on it, so I believe that's how it would work. I mentioned the city manager being certified. One of the things they're certified in is HR, which is a great thing to have. It's also financial for budgeting and that kind of thing. But so I don't know 100% the answer to your question, but I believe that's how it would work.
Great. And so our final question, Keith, you can address your question to a former speaker. This isn't how we usually do it, but I think this is a smaller, much less formal meeting than typically the things I run. So Keith, please go ahead, unmute yourself and ask your question, which I believe was probably to Mara.
Yes, that's correct. You mentioned something about the census and how some of the districts have more population than others. Would it be feasible to make sure that all the districts have the same amount of population?
Well, absolutely. I mean, when the first Congressional Congress formed the census back in, I bet Mike Sheehy knows this, 1790, I think it was, it absolutely by law will have to be exact, and there's a government entity that will have to approve it. I mean, it probably will have to be approved in Montgomery, and then I wouldn't be surprised if it had to be all of the redistricting for, congressional, local, city, all will have to be approved. And we'll do it just like we do the school system, where each school in the city of Madison has the same percentage of free and reduced lunch, same socioeconomic, as close as possible. If you walk into a fourth grade class at Horizon Elementary, Rainbow Elementary, Columbia Elementary, you're going to see, 18 Caucasian, X number of African American, X number of Asian. It's all about balance and accuracy and fairness. And each district will have, as close as possible, the same exact number. So we live in a community of 60,000, let's say, just for the ease of numbers. We're going to 6th district. Each district will have 10,000 people. Does that answer your question, Mr. Williams?
Okay, and typically, I think, that would be the point at which we would close it. You all have the opportunity to follow up later through other formats. Tara, I have a little pitch to give for Braver Angels, but did you have any wrap up you wanted to give before that?
I just wanted to thank everybody for taking the time this evening to have this conversation. I think conversations like this are really important. And I look forward to having more of these conversations, maybe even about different topics in Madison. So thank you all for being here and for offering your input. It was really great.
Yes, thanks to everybody. And I promise you, this is a very brief pitch. So I do this through Braver Angels, and Braver Angels is something that I really believe in for people getting together and having a kind of conversation that is much rarer than it should be in our country today. And I don't think I have to give you the link to the website if you're interested, because it's Braver Angels, and there aren't a whole lot of competing organizations with that name, so it comes up pretty quickly. So it's been a real pleasure. It's been great working with all of you, and wish you all the best in the future. And I would ask the core team, the people who put this on, stick around for about 10-15 minutes, and we'll do a little debrief. But to everybody else, thank you so much. Have a lovely evening. May all be well.
Thanks
Thank
all.
you.
Thank
Great
you.
discussion.
Have a good night.
Thank you,
Yes.
Mr. Chair. Wonderful.
This was informative and well conducted. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
And so still have a few people